In today's Talk About Talk episode, I'm going to share my answer to the number one most common question that I get these days from my individual coaching clients and in the workshops that I lead. It's this. People say, Andrea, I do understand how important it is when I'm developing my personal brand to focus on my strengths and my accomplishments. But how do I actually articulate my strengths in public without sounding arrogant and conceited and boastful?
Let's do this. Let's talk about talk.
Welcome to Talk About Talk, episode number 144, articulating your strengths and accomplishments without sounding arrogant. I'm so glad you're here. And by the way, if my voice sounds a little hoarse, I did catch a little bug, but I'm trying to be a pro. The show must go on. Let me introduce myself. My name is Dr. Andrea Wojnicki, and I'm your executive communication coach. Please, just call me Andrea. I'm the founder of Talk About Talk, where I coach communication skills to ambitious executives like you through one-on-one coaching, monthly boot camps, workshops, and keynote speaking. My objective is to help you improve your clarity and your confidence so that you will have more credibility. And when you have credibility, you can make a real impact. And that's when you're going to get noticed and your career will take off. That is our goal here. If this resonates with you, then I also encourage you to check out the talkabouttalk.com website. There are many, many resources there to help you out. If you're an individual executive, there's information about private coaching and small group boot camps. If you're a leader or an HR manager looking to boost the communication skills of your team, well, there's also information about corporate workshops and keynote speeches. And for everyone, there's plenty of free resources too, like the archive of this bi-weekly podcast, and I really hope you'll sign up for the Talk About Talk email newsletter. That newsletter is your chance to get communication tips and coaching from me every week. I also hope that you'll connect with me on LinkedIn and maybe send me a message and let me know what you think about this episode. All right, let's get going. Articulating our strengths and our accomplishments without sounding arrogant. That's the hard part. Like I said, this is the most common question that I get. This is a common dilemma. I've said this before on other episodes, but it bears repeating. Your work does not speak for itself. You must speak for your work. Back when we were much younger, like think about when we were students, or maybe in the first few years of our careers, people were looking out for us, right? They were looking to cite examples of our great work and to highlight it. This happened in school for us as they graded us for everything that we did. But once you reach middle level and senior level management, you must speak for your own work. And of course, this is important because you need to establish credibility. You need your hard work and your success to be attributed to you. Of course, at the same time, you don't want to be seen as arrogant or selfish or narcissistic, right? I understand. This is a quandary, isn't it? This reminds me of where I want to start, this whole I am humbled thing. You know, the announcements on LinkedIn where people announce their promotions or their awards. They do have a legitimate reason to be proud and to make an announcement. And of course, they should share their success. Have you ever noticed, though, how so many of these announcements start with, I am humbled? It's the same at the Oscars and the Academy Awards, wherever people are being recognized. And they have to, or maybe they want to say something. But I am humbled? Really? I wonder sometimes if this has become a cliche filler that's supposed to convince us that the person is modest and has humility. But do they even know what they're saying? This is what I mean by filler. I don't think they know what it means. Do you know what being humbled means? Let me tell you about the definition of being humbled. Being humbled means lowered in condition, power, or dignity. In other words, brought down a notch. It refers to a situation that caused you to realize your limitations and your vulnerabilities. So you see, it doesn't even make sense that you would say you are humbled to receive an award or a promotion. Certainly, you might argue that the definition of being humbled has evolved over time, so that being humbled now means your recognition of an undeserved honor. But I'm not the only one out there that perceives this phrase as insincere. I've read plenty of rants on social media where people are similarly begging people to stop using this phrase. So I guess I'm adding to this rant, aren't I? My advice, just avoid the phrase. Instead of saying, I am humbled to receive this award or this promotion or whatever, how about expressing your enthusiasm or your honor or your gratitude? As in, I am excited to share that I was recently promoted, or I'm excited about the opportunity, or I'm honored to be recognized with this award, or even I am grateful for the acknowledgement, I'm thankful, or I'm appreciative. You get the idea. So that's the first thing that I want to emphasize. Stop saying, I am humbled. It's filler, it sounds insincere, and it might not even be correct. Speaking of correct, there's one other thing I want to talk about before we get going here. When you're articulating your strengths or the things that you're proud of course, it has to be authentic. The thing you're talking about has to be true. You're not promoting falsehoods about yourself. You're not making things up that you think others want to hear. This is the truth. And as far as I'm concerned, the proverbial humble brag is not the truth. You're pretending to be humble when you're bragging, even if it's indirectly. Do you know what I mean when I say humble brag? This is different from I am humbled. It's those convoluted, insincere statements that you hear, as in, I can't believe they chose me to deliver the presentation to the senior leadership team, or it's so exhausting being the only person that my boss can trust to train the new folks. Ugh, humble bragging is so offensive. Please don't do it. So, with those two things out of the way now, number one being stop saying I am humbled, and number two, be truthful, no more humble brags. Now, let's get into this. What should you say when you want to articulate your strengths and share your accomplishments without sounding arrogant? I'm going to take you through 3 different strategies that you can use. Of course, it's 3, right? The power of 3, always. Well, almost always. The 3 strategies are 3 magic words, pivoting, and own it. Now, let me elaborate on each of these. The first strategy is what I like to call the 3 magic words. What are the 3 words? People tell me. As in, people tell me that I have a lot of energy and I'm able to engage people with my podcasts and in my workshops. Or you might say, people tell me that I have a rare ability to identify consumer insights. Or perhaps you'd say, people tell me that I am an exceptional people leader and mentor. This strategy of saying people tell me gets a lot of positive feedback from the folks that I coach. I'm sharing this strategy with you first because I really, really like this one. It is immediately actionable. Ask yourself right now, seriously right now, ask yourself, what is something positive that people say about you that you might want to share with the world? This could be a key element in your personal brand. The reason these 3 magic words work, people tell me, is that it sounds less arrogant when it's coming from a third party. You're not talking about yourself directly. Rather, you're sharing what other people say about you. It also sounds more credible because it's almost like a third-party testimonial, right? So that's the first strategy. 3 magic words. People tell me. Please try it. Are you ready for the second strategy? It's to pivot. Yes, I realize we've all had enough of this word, pivot. I'm sorry if it's bringing up COVID-induced PTSD, but the word pivot really is what you can do here, as in state your strength or your accomplishment and then pivot and elaborate on something else. I have 3 specific suggestions for what you might elaborate on. But first, I want to tell you how I personally use this strategy. It's when I drop the H-bomb. You know, the Harvard bomb. Of course, I do know that some Harvard graduates talk nonstop about their degrees, dropping the H-bomb as often as they can. Personally, I avoid the H-bomb unless I'm creating a corporate bio or if I'm listing my credentials for a specific purpose. Or if, like right now, I'm using it as an example of how to talk about your accomplishments. So imagine if I said, I earned my doctoral degree from Harvard. Boom. And then I just paused and stopped right there. Versus if I said, I earned my doctoral degree from Harvard Business School, where my research focused on interpersonal communication and word of mouth. I focused on this phenomenon of word of mouth to better understand who and under what conditions people talk. Do you see what I did there? I pivoted away from my degree, my credential, or my strength, and I focused or elaborated on something else. A similar example for you might be related to your degree, or maybe it's a promotion or an award that you received, or maybe it's just a trait that sounds weird to say about yourself. How can you mention these things without sounding arrogant? Obviously, our first strategy of 3 magic words, people tell me, isn't going to work here. You aren't going to say, people tell me I got promoted, or people tell me I won an award. That just doesn't make sense. So instead, you might try stating your credential and then pivoting. When I was preparing for this episode, I actually sat down and made a list of several ways that we can pivot, and I realized that they fall into 3 categories. Yeah, you probably could have guessed that, right? Let me tell you what they are. It's learning, other people, and gratitude. So now let me elaborate and give you some examples so that you can make this real for yourself. Okay, the first way that you might pivot is to focus on what you learned. This is basically what I do with my HBS or Harvard Business School example. I pivot to talking about my research and what I learned, right? For you, it might be when you're talking about a recent promotion. You could say something like, I've had the privilege of learning from some exceptional mentors along the way. Sounds great, right? A bonus or benefit of pivoting to what you learned is that you're highlighting implicitly your impressive growth mindset without actually saying so. Something like, I've learned a lot from the challenges I've had along the way, or through failures like X, I've learned valuable lessons that really shaped my strengths. Or you could even be self-deprecating, if you feel the need to be so, focusing on what you have to learn. Something like, I may be good at leading teams through transformation, but my tech skills could sure use a boost. Just ask anyone on my team. Okay, so that's the first way you can pivot. Pivot to learning. You could also pivot to other people, as in, our team's collective effort inspired me and played a significant role in our success. Or, it's incredible how our group's dedication made this project a success. So these are the follow-ups to stating your accomplishment. It's about stating your accomplishment and then shifting the focus to other people. So now we've covered pivoting to what you've learned and pivoting to other people. The third pivot, as I said, is to gratitude. This is about being gracious. But be careful, you don't want to wade into humble brag territory. Remember, what you're saying needs to be 100% the truth. You could state your strength or your accomplishment and then say, I appreciate something, or I'm grateful for the opportunities and the people who have supported me. For this one, you could use the word thankful, or appreciate, or grateful. You get the idea. Articulate your strength or your accomplishment, and then pivot to your gratitude. So those are the 3 ways to pivot when you're articulating your strengths and your accomplishments. You can pivot to learning, pivot to other people, or pivot to your gratitude. Put another way, you could say you're going to focus on your growth mindset, you're going to be inclusive, and you're going to be gracious. Ooh, I like that list. Okay, now we're moving on to the last of 3 strategies for how you can share your strengths and your accomplishments without sounding arrogant. We've covered the 3 magic words. Do you remember what they are? For the record, I absolutely hate pop quizzes, but I'm hoping to help you memorize these strategies. So pop quiz, do you remember the 3 magic words? It's people tell me. That's the first strategy. We also covered the second strategy, 3 ways that you can pivot the conversation. Shift to elaborate on either what you learned, other people, or your gratitude. The last strategy is this. own it. Just own it. Put a big smile on your face and say something like, actually, I am really proud of that. Or perhaps you could say, I know I can't do everything, but this one thing, yeah, gosh, I am good at that. Okay, and that's where we're going to stop. As I said at the very beginning of this episode, I tried to choose podcast topics where I know you're going to get a lot of traction. I think about the questions that I get in my coaching sessions and in the workshops that I lead. And this question of how to share your strengths and accomplishments without sounding arrogant is definitely one of the most, if not the most common question that I get. This is a common dilemma. So I hope that the suggestions that I've shared with you are helpful. Okay, let me give you a quick review so you can memorize these strategies. Really make them stick to your brain. Are you ready? First, 2 reminders. The first reminder is please, please, please avoid saying, I am humbled. I'm humbled to receive this promotion. I am humbled to receive this award. Blah! Instead, try saying, I am honored, or it is a privilege, or I am grateful. Honored, privilege, or grateful. Got it? The second reminder is to always be truthful when you're stating your strengths and your accomplishments, and to avoid the humble brag. The humble brag is insincere and even offensive. Just don't do it. Then we have 3 strategies for what to say when you do share your strengths and your accomplishments. The first is 3 magic words. People tell me, as in, people tell me I'm great at whatever your strength is. The benefit of this strategy is that it's almost like a third-person testimonial. The second strategy is to pivot. So you state your strength or your accomplishment, and then you pivot to one of 3 things. Either what you learned, or other people, or you can pivot to your gratitude, as in, I appreciate, or I'm thankful, or I'm grateful for this award. Okay, the third and last strategy is a simple one. It's this. Just own it. Put a big smile on your face and let everyone know how proud you feel. Of course, you can't do this all the time. But if you save it for when you really mean it, this is a great way for you to reinforce the strengths and the accomplishments that you want other people to know about you. One last thing I want to mention here. If you're the kind of person who really is concerned about sounding arrogant or conceited or boastful, then chances are you do not sound that way. It's the folks that don't worry about it that do sound that way, okay? So you can take some comfort in that. But based on the conversations that I've had with ambitious executives who are hesitant to share their accomplishments and their strengths, I know many of them actually avoid sharing their strengths and their accomplishments altogether. If you're one of those people, then I strongly encourage you to think about the various strategies that I shared in this episode so that you can confidently share your unique strengths and accomplishments. People tell me that this advice is a game changer. Did you see what I did there? Okay, if you're looking for a review of the content I shared in this episode, you can always check it out in the transcript. Please let me know how it goes for you, okay? And please share this episode with someone that you know who might like to share their strengths and accomplishments without also sounding arrogant. Thank you. And thanks for listening. Talk soon.